The idea of this video is to go from this form field to this and then this, all while explaining how to do it, why to do it, and what trade-offs are made with each iteration. So let's start from the beginning. Here we have something like a registration form. We have a form object, an errors object, and then a submit function that fakes receiving some errors from the server. Then comes the template, which is complicated to say the least. Maybe not complicated, but super messy. We have labels, inputs, classes, conditionals, errors, and so on. So nothing is being reused here. However, the great thing about this is that everything here is super flexible and customizable. Each element on this form can be customized however we want to. But the question we need to ask is, do we need this? Do we need to be able to customize everything here? The answer is probably no. Most form fields should look and work the same. So trading customization for reusability seems like a great deal in this scenario. So let's do it. Let's go through this form and extract some reusable components. So I'll grab this and go create a new file called label.view. We'll have script setup and then template and paste that in. Let's define some props. We'll do const props equals define props. We'll have for, which needs to be a string. We'll turn this into a dynamic attribute and set it to props.for. Then we'll have required, which needs to be a boolean, and we'll use this to decide whether or not we should display the star. So here we'll do a if props.required, and then name will be replaced by slot. Let's go ahead and import the new component, label, and use it here. So we'll have label for name will be required, and then we'll have name here. And there we go. Let's use it for the other fields. So here we have email. And then we have password. And there we go. Let's continue with the input. We'll grab all this, create a new component called input. We'll have script setup and template, paste that in. Let's define the props. We'll have ID, which needs to be a string, model value, which can either be a string or a number, required, which needs to be a boolean. For the error, we'll use invalid, which also needs to be a boolean. And let's also add area described by, which needs to be a string, for this helper message right here. Let's go ahead and define the events. So we'll do const emit equals define emits. This takes in an array with update model value. Then we'll have ID equals to props.id. We'll no longer have a vModel, but value set to props.modelValue. And then on input, we'll take in the event and emit update model value with event.target.value. Then I'll remove the type and placeholder and leave these to be inherited. Required will be set to props.required, and then here we'll have props.invalid. We have a typo here, it should be props, and I think we're good to go. Let's go ahead and import the new component, so we'll have input and use it. So here we'll have input with a capital I. We'll keep the errors.name but remove the class and add in invalid, which will be bang bang errors.name. So this basically converts this into a boolean. Let's move along. We have this input. We'll have errors.email. And then this one with errors.password. Let's refresh, fill in the form, submit it, and there are the errors. So we are good. Let's do the error message next. So I'll grab this, create a new component called error message. We'll have script setup. Actually, we don't even need this. We'll just have the template. We'll remove the VIF and add in the slot. Let's go ahead and import this component. So we'll do error message. Here we'll have error message, remove the class, and do the same for the others. Email and password. Let's go ahead and extract the final component, which will be helper message. We'll have template, paste that in, and replace it with slot, and also remove the ID. The ID will be inherited. Okay, now here we'll import the component, so we'll have helper message, and here we'll do helper message, ID help password, and this will be the content, but we no longer need the class. Refresh, and there we go. So now this form is way better. The reason it's better is because now if we want to change the label, for example, we'll just go here and say text base and uppercase, and all the labels will be updated, which is nice. Let's close all this and have another look at the registration form. While we now have some reusable components, there are still things that could be better. This version is still a bit error-prone. Some unlucky changes might lead to unexpected results, mostly because we always need to keep these attributes in sync. So if the for attribute changes, I also need to change the ID. If errors.name changes, I also need to update these, and so on. It would be great if we could remove some of this duplication. And we can, with a dedicated field component that controls all the generic field-related stuff. So things like label, error message, and helper message. So let's create a new field component. I'll go here, create a new file called field.view. We'll have script setup, and then template. Let's go ahead and grab an entire field. So I'll grab the password, paste that in, and import the missing components. So we'll go here, grab all these, paste those in, and we'll now define our props. So we'll do const props equals define props. We'll have ID, which will be a string, and we can now use it here. So we'll have props.id, and here we'll have label, which will be a string as well, and we can use it here. So props.label, but we'll only show this if we have a label. So if props.label, we'll have required, which is a boolean, and we'll use it here, and also here on the input. For the error, we'll do error and string. We'll replace this with props.error. For help, we'll do props.help. So we'll have help here. And then for the ID, I also want to set like a default, which will be a generated ID. So I'll go here and say type string, and then default, which will be a function. And here what I want to do is have something like field, and then generate an ID using the UUID library. So I'll go ahead and install it, and then pull it in. So I'll do import v4 as UUID v4, or just UUID from UUID. And now I can use this function to generate an unique ID. Okay, then what we want to do is, for this described by, we should check if we have a help message. Let's also add a VF here. If we have a help message, we should generate an ID for this as well. So I'll go ahead and create a computed property called area described by, and this will be computed. And here we basically want to check if we have a help message, so bang bang props.help. Then generate an ID called help, UUID. Otherwise, null. Let's make sure we import the computed function from view and use it here and here. Now, if we remove this ViewModel and try it out, it should work. So let's import the field component and use it here. So we have like a field, we can add the label, we can make it required, we can add an error, and even a help text. However, the whole point of the field component was to allow us to use different input types. So here I might want to use a select or a text area and so on. So this should be replaced with a slot, and input should be moved here. So I'll grab this, put it here. But now the problem is, how do I send all this to the slot? We could just do vbind and then send in the props, and then we could go here and receive the props using vslot, slot props, and then sending them down to the input component using vbind and slot props. And this should work. Let's say type text, placeholder John Doe. So this should work. If I look here, let's say ID something. If I open this, I should see the same IDs. So ID something and for something. So this works, but I don't want to do this for every field. What we could do instead is use provide inject. So we can remove this and this, go here to the field and say to any child component in the tree, let's do provide, and I'll say field props. Provide is imported from view, and then inside the input component, so now I'll go to the input, I'll need to inject that. So I'll do here const field equals inject, and let's import that from view, which is already done. Inject field, and we should also set a default, which will be the props. And now down here, we can use field.id, we can use field.required and field.invalid. Now back to the field component, there are some things missing from the props. So since this is read-only, we'll turn it into a computed property here, and we'll return everything inside props, and then invalid, which will be bang bang props.error, and also the area described by, which will be area described by .value. So now we are sending all this to whatever child we have here. Then the input basically injects the field, and if there is no field, we'll use the default props. So that means we can go here and let's say we have name. It's a required error will be errors.name. We can now remove this and move to the email. Email is required. Placeholder will be john@doe.com. Type will be email. And now we can remove this. Let's do the same for the password. And this also has a help text. So let's grab it. Let's remove all this and say help. Paste that in, save. Let's fill in the form to test it out. And there we go. This is much cleaner. It's much shorter and pleasant to work with, and we no longer need to worry about mismatching attributes and props. The only downside is we lost some customization power, but I, for one, I am okay with that. That was the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like it, share it, subscribe, click the bell button. Code snippets are in the description. Bye.